morning. Thanks for joining me at Coffee with Corey. Well, I got back from Florida last weekend just in time for the snow and the blizzard-like conditions. How exciting is that, right? It was funny because I think it was the day after I get back. I'm texting with Spencer, the son that lives down around the corner from us, and he was all excited getting his snowblower ready. And I told him, I'm like, man, I'm gonna use the wait till Wednesday method to get my driveway clean. Because by Wednesday, the snow was melting already. And now here we are the following weekend, a few days later, and it's definitely all gone because it's in the 70s now. So the old adage in South Dakota still rings true. If you don't like the weather, just wait 15 minutes because it'll probably change. So once again, a few things to get to this week. I'm going to lead with something I saw on social media, and it was a piece of advice that kind of hit home with me because I know that I do this. It said, stop telling people your plans. When you make an announcement, when you tell people your plans, you get that dopamine hit of accomplishment without actually accomplishing anything because your brain thinks that you've already done it because you're talking about it. I don't know if that's entirely true. I think there's an element of when you announce things, it puts that added fuel and fire to make sure that you don't end up making an announcement that doesn't happen. But I do think there's some truth in that whole aspect of feeling that sense of accomplishment because you're talking about it. So there's a few things that we're working on at the experience, and I'm going to try and follow that little piece of advice, and we're not making any big announcements. We're gonna forge onward, excuse me, with a few things, and then as we get the accomplishments, then we'll just celebrate them together. We'll give that a shot. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, you know, in the stage that I'm at in my career now, I get to meet with a lot of business people. I have the opportunities to visit with folks. And I had a meeting this week where the topic of conversation turned to how this individual had made some decisions and done some things early in their career that they kind of wish they wouldn't have. Didn't put them in a very good light, and it's kind of hampered some relationships in their line of work. And we kind of talked through that, and it's interesting because it kind of goes back a little bit to last week. We talked about integrity and doing the right thing and all of that. And this, as we had the conversation, I don't think it was necessarily a lack of integrity so much as just not 100% thinking through the best way to do this individual's business. And they recognized that too, and like, hey, wished it wouldn't have gone the way that it went, and but now we're gone on another path, and trying to make it happen that way. And as we talked about it, and then talked further about how some people are still see them in a negative light. It reminded me of a quote that from the show Ted Lasso. I think a few years ago we probably talked about it because Jossie and I were watching it, and there's so many good pieces of advice and quotes from that show that I really enjoy. I don't know if we've ever talked about this one though, so if we have, forgive me. But he says something to the effect of, I hope all of us or none of us are judged by the actions from our weakest moments, but rather by the strength that we show if and when we're ever given a second chance. And that came to mind this week after that meeting that I had. And I think all of us can look at that from both sides, right? You look at it and you go, okay, I've made some poor decisions and had some poor actions based on weak moments and things that I just didn't handle correctly. And I hope that as people would view me and view how I conduct business or relationships or anything of that nature, that they wouldn't judge me on those weakest moments. They would look at it and say, okay, he's also done X, Y, and Z, and made those kinds of specific situations better. And and then from the other side of it, as you're looking at others, I think it helps. That quote kind of helps give you the ability to grant a little bit of grace towards people that you feel like, oh, well, they shouldn't have done this or they shouldn't have done that. And then if you can kind of take that step back and give them a little grace and go, okay, if you give them a second chance because they want to do something better, there might be an opportunity there. And so again, I thought that was good information, and it made me reflect this week, which seems like we do that a lot here on Coffee with KORY, right? We reflect on what's transpired over the course of the week. So I'm going to leave you with a quote that one of my buddies sent to me this week. I don't get a chance to see him as much as I used to. He sent me a quote from Maya Angelou that says, people will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but people will never forget the way you made them feel. And I've always loved that quote because it's so very true. I think back across so many people in my life, when their name comes up, you think about the feeling that you have when you spent time with them, and you don't necessarily remember all the things that you talked about or all the things that you did. Some of it, but it's much more about the feeling that you have when you think about that person. I love that quote. So thanks for sharing that one with me, buddy. I needed that this week. All right. That's the whole wrap. Hopefully we can keep this great weather going here in South Dakota and keep pushing forward in the sunshine. So hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with KORY.